Welcome to Autism, God's Bright Kids, a show by angelarts.biz. Here on this podcast show, you will find encouragement in the midst of the challenge of autism. We will share stories of how God works in the midst of those affected by autism, as well as how He uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Because there is hope, there is life, there is love in the midst of autism. And here is your host, Dana Susan Beasley.
I am your host, Dana Susan Beasley, and welcome to God's Bright Kids. It's Tuesday, May 14th, 2024, and I'm recording this show in Colorado Springs, Colorado, where the weather is, as usual, crazy. So it's definitely springtime in the Rockies. I'm excited to share with you today about autism and art. Huge passion of mine. And before I get started, let me just tell you, I missed last week because my family and I were traveling to Texas or visiting in Texas, and I felt like I really needed a vacation away, and I just could not work ahead. It's really been kind of frustrating that I haven't been able to do that, but yeah, so I definitely had to drop last week, and I hope that you will enjoy the show today, and I plan on, God willing, to be able to do this on a regular basis and hopefully be able to even get ahead. It always is a challenge with everything I have to do. All right, so without further chit-chat, let's talk about autism and art. And why should we talk about art? I mean, who cares about art, right? Well, not really. Art is very important because creativity is important. Creativity is what is unique and new, and it involves the imagination. And it helps us to own our expression, which is a very healing thing. It is often a non-typical use of materials. It gives us energy, and it is artistic. All this brings a sense of value and of self-worth. Now, this is opposed to being non-creative, which would be following the norm, not flexible, copying someone else, and needing directions. By the way, all this information comes from my learning that I did in college from a course called Creative Experiences with Children, one of my favorite college courses. And so it's something that I learned and practiced with my own son and the children that are in my program, my live action role play program. So, here's the deal. Autistic children and adults are unique. You are not the norm, that's for sure. That's why they call it nowadays neurodivergent. I personally like something that our local weatherman says, a Colorado weatherman named Cody. He says neuro-spicy. I like it. Anyway, instead of something to be ashamed about being not the norm, because guess what? Normal is a setting on the dryer. That's it. This is a chance to really stand out and be engaged in a positive activity for your child or yourself that will bring growth. Yeah, just remember, gotta take a sip of water here. I mean, don't remember that, but remember that creativity is a process, and it's a fulfilling one. Yes, it can be challenging. I mean, I think about several years ago, my husband and I went on a date to painting with a twist. And so he and I made these paintings of a tree. And I was thinking the whole time about these voices in my head that were coming from my mother and my sister, who are very good artists in my mind. And I was thinking, oh, you shouldn't do this. Oh, you shouldn't do that. And the process was frustrating. But my husband, very meticulously, made a drawing of a tree, very precisely. Funnily enough, what I was trying to make some landscape or something. It ended up to be a lake. So it was definitely not precise. But anyway, creativity is a process, and it can be sometimes frustrating, but it's also very fulfilling. It's a process of changes, of failures, like I said about my painting, and successes. I mean, I do have a painting, and it's around here somewhere. I haven't found a place to hang it up. But creativity takes effort and hard work, but it is worth it. And here I'm going to say my soapbox about artificial intelligence. Yes, I have found artificial intelligence to be very useful for marketing. No doubt. That is the writing part of it. I don't like art that's used with an AI. I think that's, in my mind, cheating because it's drawing from these different artists. I don't know. I guess I separate visual art from marketing, writing. I wouldn't ever write a poem, use AI to write a poem and pass it off as mine. I wouldn't, have it write a fiction story and say I wrote it. No, I mean it might give me an outline, it might give me some good ideas, but ultimately we need to be in control. And I heard this today from someone that was watching on YouTube, and they said that in 6 years all these jobs will be non-existent, like graphic design. Well, I'm a graphic designer, and so is my son. And no AI, and this is my soapbox, so bear with me. No AI can replace the creativity of a person. No way, no how. This is, this is just like coming from my gut. It's so strong in me. So, yes, it can help and it can be a useful tool, but it is not going to replace the creativity of humans. And that's why this is so important, especially with those who are neurodivergent. Because the thing is that the more people use AI and they pull from all these databases, the more it's going to sound and look alike. And that gives you and me and our kids the chance to shine. Because if we are originalists, if what we are creating, like artwork, like poems, fiction writing, then it's going to stand out because it's going to be different. And this is our chance to shine. And the thing is, being neurodivergent is a way to shine now too. So never, ever feel ashamed for being autistic or take that shame on for your child. I know that when I told a doctor I fired her since, I told her that my son was autistic, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Or like Autism Speaks used to have these awful commercials, and we'd go to this one store, a consignment store, and they would have these commercials on in the background, and Sam would hear them, and there was just doom and gloom. Oh, my life is over because my child has autism. Oh, my. I am not. Now, hear me. I'm not saying it's not hard. Yes, it's hard, and there's different levels of difficulty that parents deal with, for sure. I totally recognize that. But this attitude that they had, and it just, Sam noticed it, and it bothered him. Like, what is wrong? It just really communicated that it was something to be ashamed about, and it's not. And art is one way that your autistic child or you yourself can shine. So, all that to say, regardless of AI and all the doom and gloom and prediction, art is still important, and creativity is even more important if you grasp this. And I am trying to grasp this and formulate it and speak it out now. If you grasp it, then you will be fine, and your kids will will be fine. In fact, they're going to be better than fine because they're going to be leaders. So it's an important deal. All right. Now let's talk about specifics with art now that I'm done with my soapbox preaching. Okay. So let's talk about an exercise. Think about a pencil. Think about all the things you can do with a yellow pencil. And if you want to, you could pause this and write these things down. All right. Whether or not you have your list, I'm going to go ahead. So here are the things that you can do with a yellow pencil. Obviously, you can write. You can stir coffee. I wouldn't suggest it with all that lead. You can put it behind your ear. You can draw. You can scratch notes. You could chew on it. Again, I'm not going to suggest that with that lead in there. You can doodle. You could have a pencil war. You can sharpen it. You could teach the color yellow. You could fill out applications. You can take tests. Oh, that doesn't sound like any fun. You can write notes in class to friends. Oh my gosh. Oh my, that reminds me of a memory when I was in 7th grade and we would pass notes to each other all the time and a friend passed a note from her friend that was in like a football shape. They used to fold them into football shapes. And on this note, he asked if I would go study with him. And unfortunately, the teacher caught us passing notes and he read it aloud in class. Oh boy, was I embarrassed. Anyway, yeah, you could write notes in class to friends. Thumb pages of a book. Throw it up to the ceiling. Make graffiti. I wouldn't suggest that either. Erase things. Or you could whittle. So just a little exercise in creativity is thinking through what you can do with a pencil. Now let's talk about obstacles to creativity. Number 1 is a teacher not encouraging. Oh my, long ago, Sam was in a art fair and there were judges. I really wish I hadn't done that because they very heavily critiqued one of his paintings. And ever since then, he just has had no desire to paint because he was just so critiqued. And I don't find that valuable. Not at that age. And the same thing happened to my mother. Someone told her early on that she was not an artist. And it took her 35 years to embrace the artist in her. Yeah, that can be a really big factor when it comes to obstacles to creativity. Then there's just giving too many directions. That can cause like a deer in the headlights kind of scenario. Another obstacle is always saying no. And then not supporting ideas. Another obstacle, believe it or not, is structured toys. That could be an obstacle to creativity. I see that a lot, like those kits in Hobby Lobby or Michael's. Great and fine, but it really doesn't encourage creativity. And then another obstacle is being too busy. Boy, I see that so much. And I feel that myself because it just seems like there's always something hiccups. So always something going on. And then feeling like it's too messy. That objection happens often. I don't really struggle with that too much because I don't mind mess. Or that it's too hard. Yeah, I get that. I mean, I kind of stopped doing crafts because, oh my gosh, I'll have to say it's because it can be messy and hard. And then there's peer pressure. You know, like you don't want to be different. You don't want to stand out. You don't want to go do anything beyond the norm because then you'll be frowned upon and made fun of, and that's too bad. And then in the case of public schools, large classes can be an obstacle to creativity. And in fact, another obstacle is your bureaucracy and cutting funds. Like one of my LARPing mothers, her daughter is graduating from high school in a town several miles from us, and she said that they are cutting they are cutting, I can't remember, I think their theater program or something, one of those programs, and it's just really, really sad. I've heard of schools cutting libraries and librarians. It's just crazy things are going on. So that could definitely be an obstacle to creativity. And then another obstacle is being too structured. And that's another thing I see all the time is this drive these days to be scheduled from early in the morning to late at night and have activities upon activities upon activities. That can be a huge obstacle to creativity. And then looking at facts or information as an end, not the means. So you look at it as a result and not as the process. And then also habit can be an obstacle to creativity. I know that my husband has a problem. He's challenged with this because he wants to create a line of tiny homes, and his habit is to just dive right into his client work. And so I'm trying to encourage him, take out 15 minutes and work on your own project. I do this with my book that I'm writing about Bigfoot, and I don't know where I'm at in it. Like, I think I'm halfway through, maybe. I don't really know. I'm just doing this for fun. I don't have an outline. But I've done it writing about 15 minutes a day. And not even that consistently. So I'm trying to help him build the habit of taking that 15 minutes several times a week and sketching out some tiny homes. And then also doing research. What stops him is just the sheer habit of the routine of just going down to his office and getting the work done. And then another obstacle to creativity is not looking beyond the obvious. We don't look deeper besides what we see on the surface. It really requires a lot of curiosity. And then another obstacle to creativity is we are used to staying within the boundaries. And this is one of the reasons why I am not that fond of coloring books to teach kids art, because it teaches them to stay within the boundaries. It doesn't really teach creativity. And then another obstacle to creativity is saying things like, that's the way we always do it. I don't know if you've ever heard this story about, something about a roast pan, how they did something with a roast pan and their grandmother did it and their mother did it, and finally the granddaughter was like, why are we doing this? And she finds out from her mother, that was because my mother did it. I don't remember what it was, but you may have heard that story. So thinking that, that's the way we always do it can really be a hindrance to creativity. And then here's a big one. Fear of failure and of taking risks. That is a huge hindrance to creativity. What would you do if you could wave a magic wand and even if you failed, it would be okay? And everything would turn out fine. What would you do? That fear of failure and taking risks really stop creativity in its tracks. And then, lastly, routine and comfort. We often find comfort in routine. And so getting out of that routine, we have to leave our comfort zones. And that's hard. We don't want to do it. So those are the obstacles to creativity. So how can we expand our thinking? Well, through brainstorming. And brainstorming means you have quantity of ideas. There's no criticism. You change the limits. You change a frame of reference. You look at each attribute. Now, who came up with this idea of brainstorming? Alex Osborne. He was the father of the idea of brainstorming. And he has some idea-spurring questions. Here they are. thinking through like an object or an idea or something. Can it be put to another use? Is there a new way to use it? Can the other uses be modified? Can it be adapted? What else is this? Can you change the meaning, the color, the motion, the sound, the odor, the taste, the form, or the shape? Can it be magnified? What can be added to it? Can greater frequency be added to it? Can it be stronger, larger? Can it have more ingredients? Can it be multiplied? Can it be minimized? What can be subtracted? What can be eliminated? How can it be made smaller, lighter, slower? How can it be split up? How can it be less frequent? Is there something that can substitute it? Who else instead? What else instead? What other place? What other time? How can you rearrange it? How can you do another layout, another sequence? Changing the base, how would that work? Reversing something, doing the opposite, turning it backward, turning it upside down, turning it inside out. Combining, how about a blend and an assortment? Combine purposes, combine ideas. And these questions can go with anything, whether it's writing a poem or a short story or creating a piece of art or building something, sculpting. Lots of different applications to this. So these questions and this creativity increases your child's or your flexibility in thinking. And that is really something helpful for someone with autism. This checklist offers many opportunities for autistic children, adults, and caregivers to utilize their imaginative powers and suggest numbers of activities you can employ. Now here's some other examples from Osborne. For instance, put to other uses. What could you do with 100 or so roller skate wheels instead of putting them on skates? Adapt. How many things can you think of that are like a bathtub? Modify. What can you think of that would make going to the dentist more pleasant? I can't think of anything. I am so dentist phobic. Anyway, magnify. What would it be like if your birthday came once a month instead of once a year? My husband always jokes that there's multiple Christmases a year. Minify. What if people were only 10 inches tall? That reminds me of a great book called The Borrowers from long ago. I love that book. Substitute. What would happen if bicycles could fly in the air and sail on water? Wow, wouldn't that be fun? Rearrange. What kind of things would be different if you had school at night instead of during the day? We tried that. Actually, it works really well. It worked really well for us. In fact, my son works at night. And I also work probably like 2 to 10 or 2 to 12 or something like that. Reverse. What would it be like if everyone walked backward all the time? Combine. What kind of invention can you come up with putting together a refrigerator, a radio, and a window? So, those are some of the examples that Osborne gave of his questions. And if you want to find out more about Alex Osborne, all you have to do is Google him. He's right there. You'll find him. Okay. Stages of art progression. These stages are in all cultures. Of course, with the developmental... Oh, my goodness. Let me start over. Stages of art progression. These stages are in all cultures. Of course, with a developmentally delayed child, where your child is may vary. So, first of all, they're non-representational, 2 to 3 years old. Scribbling doesn't mean anything, visual or aesthetic. Zigzag, continuous circles, separate circles. Then B, representational, 3 to 4 years. Circles with eyes and face present something symbolically. Intellectual realism, what they know about, not what they see. That's what they draw about. And then they draw large, like the head is bigger than the body. Then the next phase is C, visual realism. They draw what they see. Sadly, most stop spontaneous art by age of 8, and here's why. Criticism, adult influence, criticism by adults. They don't have access to materials, responses to their scribbling. Parents will give instructions prematurely, and they're just not ready. So, question is, what do you do when you see your child's art? Don't say anything right away and talk about the elements. Color, line, form. Those two things. Let me repeat them. Don't say anything right away. Talk about the elements. Color, line, form. And I wish I had read that before I talked to my son tonight, because before I did this podcast, he wanted to show me his map that he's creating for a game simulation that he plays. And he creates these huge, huge maps of cities and country, and countryside and all this. And that's something I could have talked about, is the color and the line and the form of everything that he's doing. All right, so how can you encourage your child? First of all, I know it's hard, but patience. And I wouldn't pray for it, because if you pray for patience, you will be tested. But anyway, patience. And then let your child manipulate materials. Now here's an example. I see this where parents, mothers, homeschoolers especially, want to force their child to write at the mechanics of writing with a pencil at a very early age, without giving them the developmental time to form those muscles. And so one of those ways that you can do that is by letting them manipulate materials. Specifically, one of my favorite things that we did was shaving cream. So you take a cookie tray and you put shaving cream on it, and you let your child draw out the alphabet in the shaving cream. Way before they ever use pencil and paper. And same with, you could use sand. There's all sorts of things you could use. But letting your child manipulate the materials is a key way to encourage them. And then have an unspoken confidence that shows, and wait and see what a child is doing. Also have a variety of materials available. Now, like my child, all I had was one time, oh my gosh, my son went through so much poster board and tape because he kept making these really great houses, cardboard houses. They were so awesome. I still have them. But, I had things that he could rotate to when he got tired of making the houses. And then let them do for themselves, and they will do more for themselves. Makes sense, doesn't it? Don't do everything for them. Just hang back and see what they're going to do. You don't have to, they don't have to do everything perfectly. I'm constantly telling my son this when, we're doing sword making with our kids. And my son has developed his crafting ability to a high degree, especially when it comes to using electric tape and duct tape and stuff. And these kids that we work with, they don't have that development yet. But he had to start from somewhere, so helping them through this and not doing everything for them is important. It's hard, but it's important, because the only way they're going to learn to do better is to practice. And yes, even fail sometimes. All right, so how do you implement an arts program, whether homeschooling or in a school or for yourself? First of all, understand child development and where your child is. As I said, I have seen over and over again parents who want to force their children to write, do printing, and they're not ready. And they haven't developed their muscles to do that, and the muscle memory. And that is why knowing that and knowing where your child is very important. And then be aware of the creative process. Like I was telling you before, it is a process. And I'll talk more about that in a second. And then realize your role is one of a facilitator. That's also extremely important. You're not a dictator, you're a facilitator. When it comes to art and creativity, you're not there to dictate a certain outcome. So being a facilitator and realizing that is what your key role is important. Now, here are the basic art processes. 1. Applying. One material applied to another material for a visual effect. 2. Forming. Modeling or construction of materials into new forms, like three-dimensional. 3. Interlacing. Fibers, weaving, knotting, or stitching fibers into patterns and designs. So those are the basic art processes. And let's talk about forming. That's sculpture, 3D. It can reflect life, habits, beliefs of people, give them exposure to different materials. 1. Modeling clay is a medium kids use, and it's a good one. But remember, they need time to manipulate the materials. And here is a clay that you can make yourself. Cornstarch clay, 1 cup water, 3 cups salt, 1 cup cornstarch. Mix water and salt and put in the cornstarch. I'll read it again. Cornstarch clay, 1 cup water, 3 cups salt, 1 cup cornstarch. Mix the water and salt, put in the cornstarch. And guess what? That's a great math lesson too. All right. Here's the second idea. Carving and casting start with hard substances, eliminating the material you don't want, like plaster of Paris. But watch out, dust and eyes can be a hazard. Or like whittling wood. It's another one. I would love to give Sam a small saw and see if he could sculpture some of the tree trunks that we have out there. That'd be interesting. Of course, I want him to carve it into a Bigfoot. Anyway, just my silly joke. And then here's a third way of forming. Construction, building something like a 3D model, a collage, a mobile, things like that. Like Sam once long ago built a birdhouse. We built a tabernacle as part of his school. That was so neat. And then I told you about his paper card houses. I mean, he would build beds, toilets, all of it. It was so good. So then there's art versus craft. Craft is developed from some need, like a purpose. Art is an individual expression. And then forms for craft. Some forms for craft. Wood, scrimshaw, I'm not sure what that is. From the earth, like clay, metal, fibers, and fabric. And then there's art forms on fabric. There's batik, that's really fun to do. Tie-dye, toys, and puppets. I love to do puppets. I learned to do puppets in this class. I love puppets. It's so much fun. And then there's folk art. They're crafts, and what they do is shown in the finished product. All right, so I know that's like breathing through a fire hose with all the information there about art. It is worth it, I can say for sure, because at age 23, my son is very much into art. He's doing it right now with building his map in this 3D world he's creating for this sim game. And he has another one that he's doing. He's going to turn into a Patreon membership club, and he's planning on monetizing it. So it is important, and the one regret I had was that in that art fair, his work was critiqued, I kind of think unfairly, too early, and so he's been discouraged from doing paintings, which I think he is a great painter. In fact, if you notice the artwork for this podcast, it's something that Sam did when he was 8 years old, and this is what inspired me to create the line of Autism God's Bright Kids awareness products and inspired me to do this podcast. So art is important. And to recap, AI is not going to replace human art if we artists say no. And it's going to make us originalists shine. And so we have to think differently. This is what thinking out of the box means. And it's very important when it comes to homeschooling and teaching autistic kids. It's important as an autistic person yourself, like my husband, who, we have to learn different ways to help him with his challenges and to help him break out of the norm because, he gets caught in the mundane and in all this client work he gets, and it can be a real grind, and he's missing the creativity of his work, and that's something that he needs. So I just hope you come away with this encouraged and that you're optimistic and you think of a plan, especially when it comes to AI, and don't let anybody tell you that it's worthless and useless. These things are going to be important. And think about it like in terms of the Dark Ages. I feel like we're going into another set of Dark Ages, but there can be a core of us who keep that art alive, keep that craft alive, and don't let it die. And I believe that autistic people especially have that gift. There's a wide range of gifts that autistic people have, from like my husband, his is architecture, Sam's is graphic arts and 3D modeling. So, don't let anyone tell you, well, it's just useless. You're just going to have to do something else. And, not that, here I'm rambling again, not that trades are important, and it is a good thing to do to get into a trade, no doubt. But don't just say, oh, art's useless. It is very important, and it will help your child or you become a leader and shine in this dark world. All right, so that is enough for that. What is the key to success? This is what I'll end with. Preparation. Bring it down to their level. Use the resources around you. It can be just as simple as one of my favorite crafts when I was a child and when I'm teaching children crafts is to just go out on a nature walk, pick up some leaves, take it back, get a piece of paper, get a crayon, take the paper off, and have them rub it. It's a really neat form of art. It's just using the resources around you. And then don't feel limited, and then think about the logistics of it, because that's often where the art will fail, is not thinking through the logistics, like, okay, where are we going to find the leaves, that kind of thing. And then, or like, maybe you don't want to do something like that when your child is needing a nap, like say if they're kindergarten age. So, you might think of the time of day that would be best for them to do art. I would never have expected my son to wake up immediately, to do art immediately after he woke up. I can't do that. All right, that's enough of my rambling. I hope you've enjoyed this, and that is all I have to share. So, let's talk about my next show. God willing, I get ahead of this. But next Tuesday, on the 21st, I will talk about gifts from above, understanding autism as a blessing. I will discuss about autism from a spiritual perspective, looking at individuals with autism as special children of God with unique abilities and perspectives. All right, so that's all for the day. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday, May 21st, when I will be talking about, like I said, gifts from above, understanding autism as a blessing. All right, together we will reach new heights in our lives and beyond, because there is hope, there is life, there is love, even in the midst of autism. Blessings to you. This is Dana Susan Beasley signing off.